Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. Malcolm X said, "The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses." 12 years ago, a whistleblower published a batch of emails from prominent climate scientists around the world. The Telegraph described the contents of the emails as the worst scientific scandal of our generation. Even arch-climate alarmist George Monbiot was horrified by the behavior of the climate scientists. He said that Phil Jones, the head of the Climatic Research Unit in England, should resign. This is probably the most famous email from Phil Jones discussing Mike's nature trick and hiding the decline. Tree ring data showed that temperatures declined after 1940, and that didn't suit their agenda, so the climate scientists simply hid it. Here's one from Phil Jones to Michael Mann. "Mike, I can't see either of these papers being in the next IPCC report. Kevin and I will keep them out somehow, even if we have to redefine what the peer review literature is." Kevin is Kevin Trenberth from the National Center for Atmospheric Research. What Phil Jones, Kevin Trenberth, and Michael Mann were doing was censoring any papers which didn't suit their global warming agenda. Here's one from Phil Jones where he bragged about getting the Freedom of Information officer to help him hide his research, which he didn't want the outside world to see. Here's one from Phil Jones to Michael Mann where they discussed deleting their emails to make sure the public didn't find out what they were up to. Here's another one from Tom Wigley at NCAR to Phil Jones where they discussed erasing the warmth of the 1940s. They said, "It would be good to remove at least part of the 1940s blip, but we're still left with why the blip." They were erasing inconvenient data and didn't even have an explanation for why they were doing it. Here's another one from Phil Jones where he admitted that much of the data he uses from the Southern Hemisphere doesn't actually exist, and he was simply making it up. This sort of behavior is pretty horrific, and the BBC responded to it by pretending it didn't happen. And now, 12 years later, the BBC is making a movie portraying the ClimateGate criminals as being heroes. The ClimateGate computer hacking scandal that rocked the scientific world is to be made into a BBC film. Hackers stole thousands of emails and documents from the University of East Anglia's Climatic Research Unit in Norwich in 2009. Actor Jason Watkins will play climate change scientist Professor Philip Jones. Watkins said it was a privilege to play the brilliant scientist whose own world was so threatened. Professor Jones became the victim of cyber terrorism with stolen emails used by human-induced climate change deniers to promote their view of global warming. This is exactly what Malcolm X was talking about. The BBC portrayed the innocent as being guilty and the guilty as being innocent. They claim that Phil Jones was the victim of cyber terrorism with stolen emails. But it's never been revealed where the emails came from. They might have come from an insider who was horrified by the behavior of the climate scientists. The BBC calls whistleblowing cyber terrorism. Phil Jones is the crooked academic who deleted emails, hid data, made data up, and censored other people's work. The BBC described this fraud as being a brilliant scientist. They said that the whistleblowers were cyber terrorists and human-induced climate change deniers. The word deniers is an intentional slur to link climate skeptics to Holocaust deniers. The BBC never allows climate skeptics to present their point of view. Instead, they apply labels to them, stereotype them, and try to create as much fear and hatred of climate skeptics as possible. They do everything they can to make sure that climate skeptics don't have a voice, because if the climate skeptics were given a voice, the BBC's audience would quickly realize that the BBC is misrepresenting their position. The BBC is acting in exactly the same way as every hate group in history. They create a target of hatred, misrepresent their position, stereotype them, and don't give them a voice. They try to convince their audience that their hatred and censorship is for a just and good cause. They say that climate skeptics are evil people who threaten the future of the planet. They say that climate skeptics can't be allowed to present their point of view because they're simply too dangerous. The BBC has modeled their argument after hate groups who target people with darker skin and people of different religions. The Ku Klux Klan said that black people are dangerous criminals and they can't be given a voice. During the 1930s in Germany, Jews were censored, and the argument was once again, Jews are dangerous and they can't be given a voice. The BBC is trying to project their own ugliness and their own hatred onto the good people in this discussion. Now let's look at a critical defining difference between how climate alarmists operate and how climate skeptics do. I'm discrediting the BBC by showing exactly what they did say. But the BBC is trying to discredit skeptics by lying about them and preventing them from having a voice. Climate alarmists' arguments don't stand up to any scrutiny, so they have to censor the other side. The BBC and other climate alarmists are engaged in a genuine form of evil. 4 years ago, I gave a very detailed presentation to the Washington State Senate. For 40 minutes, I showed in great detail exactly what other people had said in their own words. The Seattle Press, of course, didn't report on anything I actually said. Their headline was, "Climate Change Denier Testifies for 40 Minutes Before State Senate." I showed exactly what the climate alarmists did say. The Seattle Press responded with stereotyping, labeling, hate speech, and censorship. Their behavior mirrored that of every other hate group in history. I posted this on Twitter 3 days ago. 1 year from today, KyriaNet and I will celebrate our first wedding anniversary. Twitter responded by censoring the picture of my beautiful wife. They said, "The following media includes potentially sensitive content." Twitter censors all of my images because a picture is worth 1,000 words. They don't want the public to know just how awful academic climate science is. It's the same strategy being used by the BBC. And yesterday, Climate Nexus wrote another hit piece on me, Tom Nelson, and a few other skeptics. They never contact us and never allow us to present our views, because if they did, their audience would quickly realize that they're misrepresenting our position. Their censorship, stereotyping, labeling, and hate speech is identical to that of every hate group in history. They try to portray the bad people as being good and the good people as being bad. They're not loading people into boxcars and they're not sending out physical lynch mobs. But they are inciting cyber lynch mobs and they're trying to spread as much fear and hatred as possible. Internet lynch mobs form the basis of cancel culture. Cancel culture is about trying to destroy the lives of anyone who goes against their agenda. Voltaire said, "Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities." Malcolm X was assassinated more than 50 years ago for telling the truth. The last thing those in power want to see is people who tell the truth and expose their lies. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on these hate groups and crooks for the past 13 years. You can visit him and Kyrie on the web at realclimatescience.com.